Good evening, everyone. It's 7:30 on Tuesday, October 15th. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Darien Board of Finance to order. First item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Haven't received any via email pertaining to stuff on our agenda. Anyone in the public like to speak? Hearing none, let's move on to our first group of business, which is transfers. First one is discuss and take action on a request to transfer $11,556 to various full-time salary accounts. Jen?
This is a correction from last month. We did the larger transfer for non-rep and part-time salary increases that were approved after the budget was adopted. At that time, I calculated it based on 26 pay periods. We have 26.1 pay periods. So this $11,000 is for the additional 0.1 pay period.
Okay. Any question? I think this came up. We knew this was going to come from last week. So, any questions on this? Okay. Entertain a motion to transfer $11,556 from various full-time salary accounts as shown in our memo.
So moved.
Paul moves. Taylor seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, the next item is to discuss and take action on a request to reallocate $514,441.42 of ARPA funds.
The December 31st deadline for having funds obligated is quickly approaching, so we did a look at all of the active projects, and departments were told they had to have funds encumbered by October 1st, and anything that wasn't encumbered would be reallocated. So what we brought to Board of Selectmen was, I think it was about $552,000. As I was preparing this, something that was unencumbered but did get paid because it had already been ordered was $37,000 invoice for the POD in a box project and a couple of other small credit card charges. So that reduced our available amount to reallocate down to the $514,000 that you have. The accounts are fully reconciled, and we've spoken with each department that had an issue, and those are all cleaned up. So when we look to reallocate funds, we kind of use three criteria. We want to be able to immediately place the order, so either it is on a state bid or available through a cooperative bidding group, or it can be bid very quickly. The department knows that they can get the specs out and bid it very quickly. And the second criteria is to provide budgetary relief in fiscal 2026, so we're pulling a couple of items forward that were in the 2026, planned for 2026. And then the third criteria was to improve access to a new asset, specifically the playground at Baker Park. On the second page after my memo, these are the projects that we want to reallocate to. So for the Baker Park playground, we're asking for an appropriation of $8,925 to have the equipment provider do the install. No bids required because they're on state contract. The subcommittee on the playground was thinking they could save money by bidding that out, but because of timing and just best practice to have the equipment provider do the install, we're looking to spend another $89.25. For $38.5, also for Baker Park, they want to improve accessibility to the new playground, make it ADA compliant with some matting that's available on state contract and a concrete walkway that's already pre-bid. The next group is 5 vehicles, 4 of which are hybrids. The fifth is a pickup truck for the Park and Rec supervisor, the Parks crew supervisor. These would be new vehicles which would allow us to redeploy some current vehicles and then ultimately replace the oldest ones, knock them out of service. Next one is $80,000 for the purchase of a mobile generator. This is something that DPW would be able to bring around to wherever generators needed, a pump station, a town hall building, anywhere in town, they'd be able to move this generator around. Additional DFD hose replacement, we already had pulled $20,000 out of the RFC and RE this year, but we're looking to pull forward from the fiscal 26 capital, the additional 20,000. No bids needed, that's on state contract, as are the vehicles and the mobile generator. Replacement of the Holohan backstop, we want to pull that forward from fiscal 26. It was deferred in fiscal 25. The bid could be completed by early November, and the Park and Rec Director has taken a look at it and said that it does need to be done. I'm looking to pull forward 5,900 from fiscal 26 capital for some turnout gear for the fire marshal's office. We're looking to pilot a laptop and port replicator program for 4,200. Right now we want to start with 3. This would allow employees to have a laptop that they can take home, that they can take on conference travel, work on the train, rather than having a desktop and a laptop. And then essential needs, we want to consolidate human services money into essential needs because it will all be spent by December 31st. It will actually provide some relief in the general fund. And then the final one, the sewer I&I, is a catch-all. We're looking to put 109,096.95 in there right now. Contract is already in place. So it will be obligated, it's already obligated. And Ed has more than the $109,000 of work still to be done. He has about $600,000 or a little bit more. So that'll be our catch-all, and as we go through and keep scraping and things close out and we have little bits, we can put them, appropriate them to the I&I project because it'll be obligated and it'll get spent. So the big sources of funds on this is from the Fire Commission. We are closing out their paving of the drill tower parking lot and their drill tower classroom projects. That's $260,000 of what we're reallocating. They were struggling with how to sequence the work that needed to be done up there. They did open a bid for the classroom foundation on 9/19, but we weren't able to get a contract in place and get it encumbered by 10/1. So that's actually, the transfer that I want to add is related to that, and it's a way to fund that project. And then some other large numbers are from DPW on drainage improvement studies. They're ongoing design projects, but some of the funds can be released. And the the DPW garage floor, we're releasing just over $81,000 because the project is complete. And the rest of them are odds and ends that had little bits to close out.
Jen, question regarding the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have the age of the 5 vehicles that are being replaced, and relatedly, will we have salvage value once those vehicles are pushed down and older vehicles are pushed out?
I don't know for a fact on salvage value. Usually, if we can salvage with them, we do. If we can auction them or scrap them, we'll get something for them. Let's see. So, first one, a Ford Escape Hybrid is going to replace a 2004 Ford Escape. The pickup truck is replacing a 2012.
Is that the PNR supervisor vehicle?
Yep.
So that's why that's more expensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the building department car that will ultimately push out, I don't have a year on that one. The DPW car is going to replace a 2015, which is ultimately going to move down, and the one that will be pushed out is a 2008. And the P&Z is going to replace a 2013, which will actually allow us to push out an older car, take that out of the service. But I don't have a year on that.
Okay, so the youngest of the 4 vehicles is 9 years old. All right. Thank you.
And Jen, just a question, in terms of, the sewer I&I, the $109,000, that was the plug, the
Yep.
goal seek, right, to get us to 514. Is there, just given we're coming down to the wire here, is there a need to give like additional authority to move, to kind of pre-move stuff to make sure if other things pop up that we can plug it in there? Like, do you need us to approve that, to move additional money in there, or?
So we do have an item on later in the agenda for administrative transfer authority. What we could do is amend that to provide temporary authority to move within ARPA. We could do something like that.
to pre-approved ARPA projects.
Yep.
And do you need to bring this back to the Board of Selectmen if you were to move it?
I would report back to them, but I think everybody understands that it's just
Okay.
going to be a scraping. And I don't envision us finding anything new. All the little scraps are just going to go into the I&I because we know that that'll meet the requirements.
Okay. Any questions on this? Rob, Malin?
Nothing.
No, thank you for finding all of that and also for finding somewhere we can put extras at the last minute. That's great.
Okay, entertain a motion to move $514,441.22 as shown in the memo here from the accounts on page 2, second page, the accounts on page 1. Taylor moves. Dan seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thanks for this, Jen. I know, like, a lot of work on you and a lot of work on staff.
Yeah.
Brian Fransport is willing to spend more money on ARPA. It's like, I found this we could do, I found this we could do.
Okay. So the next one is discuss, take action on request to transfer $17,825 from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve to the Administrative Capital Reserve.
So this is kind of related to the ARPA closeouts. In order to facilitate closing those out, we said anything that was unencumbered as of 10/1 is going to get reallocated. But there are some things like the bridge project, that's going to be an ongoing project, and things may crop up because we just are getting started on the project. So what I would like to do is kind of resurrect our capital reserve, administrative capital reserve account. We had originally put in $30,000 several years ago. There really wasn't much of a need for it. We had the balance sitting at $2,175. But I'd like to bring that up to $20,000 and use the same criteria so that when Ed is working on his bridge project, if there's something that comes up, we can immediately address it through the RFC&RE Administrative Reserve. Because I don't want them to be stuck because we don't have the ARPA money, and I'd like to be able to keep those projects moving.
For things like for which bridge? Is this the Rings End or Hanson?
Not Hanson. It is the, bridge repair on Rings End.
Okay. And can you remind me, did we pass a bonding resolution for some of that work?
For that one, no.
Okay.
That's just one example. I could envision other projects that have little things that come up and we've already scraped them and we want to be able to address those.
Good. I think we created this account when we scrape a lot of the small little capital reserves out of all the different budgets and then
Yeah,
put this in, so.
makes sense.
Yep. Any questions? Okay. Accept the motion to transfer that $17,825 from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve down to the Administrative Capital Reserve. All previously appropriated dollars, right? Paul moves. Malin seconds. All those in favor? Great, unanimous. Okay, so I'll accept at this point a motion to add a new item to the agenda. The agenda would be a transfer of $135,000 from the upgrade traffic preemption account to the Joel Tower classroom account. Is there a motion to add that to the agenda? Dan moves, Malin seconds. Okay, so there'll be a vote to add that to the agenda as item number 4. We need 2/3 at least to do that. So all in favor of adding that to the agenda? It's unanimous. Okay. So now to you, Jen.
So as part of the ARPA cleanup, this is the one that the Fire Commission got bids back on 9/19 but couldn't get to a contract in time to encumber the funds. So we looked through their capital accounts and they, several years ago, in fiscal '22, had an appropriation of $300,000 to upgrade their traffic preemption system. With what they've spent so far of about $41,000, and they have about $120,000 encumbered, that left funds that, while they do have some other things that they would like to do with the traffic preemption, they're not far enough along right now, and they felt that the Drill Tower Classroom Foundation was more of a priority. So what we'd like to do is transfer $135,000 from traffic preemption to fund the drill tower classroom foundation. And then when they have a better sense of what other traffic preemption needs or projects they have, they'll put them into the annual budget. So Sean Murphy is here from the Fire Commission if you have any questions on this.
Did you say 135 or 235?
135.
And this was,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, this is, we just took 120 out of the ARPA.
Right.
Here, so just maybe like for the public and so we're all aware, we're not necessarily approving new projects sort of on the fly, if you will. These are projects that already been kind of well thought out, pushed through various boards and
Right.
committees and so forth. We're just sort of moving which dollars we're using for it, right?
Right.
Would we expect the traffic preemption project with the remaining work to be done to remain under 300,000?
Yes, so they've spent 41, they have about 120,000 encumbered, so overall, they're gonna spend about 165 of this 300, which is what's leaving the remaining 135
But
to
then there's
transfer
more,
out.
I thought you said that there'd be more items to be identified that would take that 165 up toward 300.
Right, and so they're willing to put those on hold because they're not 100% formed yet. They have some ideas of what they want to do. It's some additions to the system, some changes to the system. So they would put those through as an annual budget
But it
request.
will remain under 300, or 300 or below? That's
That
my
I don't
question.
know.
Yes? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Again, this was a project we had already appropriated dollars for.
When would this work begin? Thank you.
Sean Murphy, Chairman of the Fire Commission. We got bids back a couple weeks ago for the foundation, concrete work, site work. So we awarded a contract to start whenever he can. So we're hoping before like winter, like December, so.
Okay,
We're-
imminently. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. We want to get this project moving, so, yeah. And then, of course, for the building aspect, we'll be coming, to the board and for the building in the next budget cycle. So.
But with respect to the actual building, like, silly question, but like we've thought ahead, like the size of the pad that we're building
Yeah.
is gonna accommodate
Yep.
the building, the clean room, the.
Yep,
all of it.
exactly. So 40 by 60. It'll have a clean room, which is like a garage storage area, and then a classroom area, so, yeah.
And that's the 120 that was earmarked in ARPA.
Yes, just for the foundation and site work is the 120, was for ARPA
So,
funding.
like ARPA, we only appropriated the slab, if you will.
Correct.
Right, so we're just really moving the slab from ARPA.
Got it,
to-
okay.
That's it.
So the building will be something in addition to all that?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
we're putting together a package for what we, our needs are at the, training center, so.
And do you have any sort of early view on where that's shaking out?
As far as location, or like?
No, in terms of just overall cost?
No, not yet. We're trying to decide whether we're gonna go stick frame or like prefab, Butler buildings type deal. So we're in the process of looking at all of our needs now.
Okay. Okay, accept the motion to transfer $135,000 from the upgrade to the traffic preemption system to the drill tower classroom. Taylor moves, Dan seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Sean, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, in terms of discussion and action items, we're going to discuss and take action on a request for a special appropriation of $89,115 to fund 2 full-time positions, I guess really within Public Works and the police budget. The Board of Selectmen discussed this last Monday. I think Public Works was earlier this week. The Public Works.
Last Thursday.
RTM, last Thursday, RTM Commercial Committee, and then I think F&B is going to discuss this tomorrow at their meeting. So, Ed, thanks.
Thank you for having me. For the record, Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. Appreciate you taking up this item tonight. As my 10 years here, I have not been in front of the Board of Finance for additional personnel. Mentioned that to the Board of Selectmen too. Always thought we had proper staffing to handle the workload that we were encountering. Probably more to my detriment, thinking that we are fully staffed and doing well. But as we've continued to add capital projects, ARPA projects, Great Island, and so it's become more of a stress and strain on the personnel that's actually trying to manage the facility at the police department. So we put together a package for the reorganization of adding personnel, reassigning tasks, and so on. That I hope you had a chance to look at. It is quite involved. There is a lot of information in there, but I thought it was important to get you a lot of detail. This is a unique request, and something I think with proper information will be vetted properly too. So, just for the record, also joining me tonight is Chief Marin to help in presenting this to you. So we did provide an overview for you folks, and what we would think would be the necessary staffing, resources, and DPW staff commitments, so that the PD can properly continue to provide maintenance and operational management of their facility. We've also included in that overview the suggested 2 new positions, the facility coordinator and the facility mechanic. This reorganization will hopefully provide us the opportunity to be proactive in our approach to maintaining the facility. That's the most important thing. We're also creating some opportunities to produce some savings along the way with programming the capital projects and providing preventive maintenance for the existing facilities and equipment that's there on site. And I can say right now, we're struggling a little bit to do that. And I'll get to that a little further and what kind of set this in motion about 7-8 months ago. So the Darien PD facility is a 37,000 square foot complex with a variety of systems and unique maintenance responsibility. It does have a firing range on site, which requires a negative air pressure inside that section of the building to exhaust the lead through a filtering system. It also has a mechanics bay that requires an exhaust system there too. It does have a communications room that standalone temperatures exceed the norm based on the amount of computer equipment located in that smaller room. So all of these are very unique to the building itself, makes this building very unique. What also makes this building very unique is it's open 24/7, 365 days a year. It also comes with some very specific state laws with regards to visitors inside the facility and prisoners, as well as the staff that works out of the building. It's previously been and currently is being maintained or managed by the administrative captain, which is, as you can imagine, not a police officer's expertise to manage such a facility. And if I can go back in time, I've been here 10 years and there have been 4 different administrative captains trying to manage this building. So every 2 or so years, there's a turnover. The lack of consistency is starting to show up in the capital planning and the preventive maintenance. The 2012 building addition was completed, and it incorporated all the some of the old and all new equipment where it came to HVAC, heating system, as well as the hot water system. So over the last 10 years, we've had issues with the HVAC equipment between the old and the new, the compatibility and how it's heating and maintaining the building, as well as parts on the older systems seeming to break down. Surprisingly so, some of the new systems also. Some of the new equipment not lasting as long. Temperature balancing throughout the building has been an issue. Condensation issues in the ductwork, water coming through the ventilation. Sanitary waste lines clogging. And then we have the leaky pipes from the soldered joints. Now the heating system in that building is copper. So you solder the joints back in 2012. And we're finding out that they used the wrong solder in soldering these elbows together and the pipes together. So what's been happening is they've been starting to leak, and we're catching the leaks a little later because there's not someone in the building to actually go through the building on a regular basis. We're doing it more now because we've found out what the problem has been. But the problem with that system is it requires you to drain the entire building to fix that one pipe or fix that one elbow, which means it's been 3/4 of the day draining it down and refilling the heating system so that you can correct this one pipe. These are the things that we're running into. These are the overtime costs that are starting to pile up. Sorry. So why a new position? In the document provided, part of the reorganization is a good explanation, in my opinion, of what we're looking to do. We provided current DPW and PD staff responsibilities at the police station to give you an idea of what we're doing now. Additional staff requests with job tasks were also included in the package to give you an idea of what we're looking for these two new positions to take over. They're slated to, if approved, and we can find the personnel to take the jobs sometime in January of 2025. That's the target. We've listed PD special and specific maintenance tasks are in that document also, and also the time allocations for both positions at the PD, breaking down what the new facility coordinator would be doing for his 40 hours and what the facility mechanic for the dedicated minimum 20 hours would be doing during his time. So first, the facility coordinator has an estimated annual cost, including benefits, about $150,000 a year. He will be dedicated solely to the Darien PD facility. He will report directly to the administrative captain. He will oversee the building maintenance, which includes the custodians, operating budget, which includes the commodities, and the 6-year capital plan. He will work on that and incorporate that and come up with a consistent capital plan that works. He will be required to escort all the vendors through the building and provide oversight for the contractors as they work through the building projects, something that we do now with different personnel, whether I'm pulling my facilities mechanic or my facilities supervisor or the mechanic from the police station. Somebody has to be with you in the building while you're working on it. So basically, this position will allow the administrative captain to focus on what he's supposed to be doing, which is his crucial police work. And will also allow our DPW facility to focus more on the other work that he's not getting to or not getting to in a timely fashion. The additional facilities mechanic is estimated annual cost about $124,000 per year, which includes benefits. He is dedicated 50% of the time to the PD, but will be supervised by the DPW. We set that up specifically so that when and if he's not needed at the PD, we can use them on other facilities here in town, and we have plenty of work to do in other facilities. But I've spoken with the chief. I made the commitment to the first selectman that the first priority for this new facilities mechanic will be the PD. That's his job. He's got to make sure that that work is done first before we go and do anything else. He will, like I said, provide additional support to other town facilities. He will work with the contractors that come into the building, the major capital projects that are being done within the police department, and provide oversight. I can't state enough the importance of having proper oversight for any type of construction project. Anytime you're doing work with a contractor or multiple contractors, they have to be watched. The project has to be provided oversight. And I think this is where we feel that we're falling a little short on some of the projects over the PD. And to be quite honest with you, some of the projects that are being impacted that I'm working on right now because I have to take personnel off to go put them over at the PD. We'll also, this facility mechanic will also provide coverage for off-hours work and vacation support. We currently have just one facility mechanic. He is allowed 4 weeks a year vacation. And I will guarantee you 2 weeks out of those years, I'm calling him in because there's something wrong either with the town hall or the PD that I know he specifically will need to work on. If he does not work on, I'm calling in a vendor, which just jacks the cost up exponentially when I start bringing this in. So what I'm looking for now is support, so I'm not bringing this gentleman in on his vacation or splitting the off-hours work. So why now and not through the budget season? Why are we asking for this now? Well, there was a transfer request that was put forth in March of 2024. It came through you folks. It inspired an inquiry from our first selectman and a directive from our first selectman to address this process of getting on top of the work that needs to be done at the PD. So a series of these major repairs that needed to be done, and they have now been completed. It took us 7 months to total about $150,000. Was the fire suppression system had to be upgraded. The 911 server room AC unit had to be replaced. That is the computer room for servers that needs to be kept cool 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. While we were waiting for the unit, we actually had to rent a unit. So there's a cost that we had to absorb by not making that a capital project. The hot water heater had begun to leak. And the communication room that I spoke of before, we had to actually break it away from the overall building system, HVAC system, to make it a standalone, what they call split units. They are put up on the walls, you see them, Motorola makes them. They actually cool that system down and cool that room down. They are dedicated specifically for the room, and we finished that project about 2 months ago. So the DPW, PD, town administrator, and the first selectman, we met multiple times to talk about solutions. We considered different approaches to addressing a lot of the issues. The obvious need of technical oversight was paramount. We weighed the current and future workload against our current manpower. Considered capital projects that were being stalled or weren't being done efficiently with the lack of technical oversight. And I think this came up at the Board of Select meeting. The other item that we kind of tried to wrap our arms around is, with these 2 new positions, how do we measure its success? How do we put a number, if we can? How do we put a number on it's a success? It is something that we made a good decision on, or Ed told us this, and it looks like it's going to succeed. And I have to say, I struggled with that, because it's not going to be a specific number. It's not going to come out of a salary overtime line item. It's going to be a combination of a lot of different things. It's going to be the ability for us to program and track our work. With proper preventive maintenance, it's going to be the ability for us to program our capital projects out 6 years and be able to, improve the building's functionality, if you will. And that's going to come from the captains and the chief telling us, you know what, we're not worried about those problems anymore because we're not seeing those problems anymore. It doesn't come with a number, but there will be times that it will reduce overtime on the weekends, overtime on the holidays. And I think that's important to kind of realize as we talk about this also. It's going to wrap up. I can say that with this plan here that we proposed, I do believe the police department can actually manage that facility responsibly with the appropriate staff and making sure we direct their efforts more efficiently. And I'm going to open it up to questions, but before I do, just want to make sure if the chief has any other comments he'd like to add. I think it'd be important to hear from him also. Sure.
Good evening, thank you. Jerry Merritt, Chief of Police. I think that the easiest way, or easiest place for me to start is when I first started as an officer here, the administrative services captain, to my recollection, was ordering paper towels, oversaw animal control, records division, and uniforms, ordered uniforms for all of us. So as you can imagine, over the last 3 decades, the responsibilities and roles of the Administrative Services Bureau captain has grown immensely. That position was always in charge of our facility. However, our pre-existing facility did not face the issues that our newly renovated, well, not even newly, but our renovated facility has in the last 12 years. We've still tried to manage those responsibilities and roles in that same position, and it's just become way too cumbersome. It's round peg, square peg, round hole, square hole type situation. And as Ed mentioned, we've had in the last, since 2019, we've had 4 separate Administrative Services Bureau captains. And I haven't seen their resumes specifically, but I don't believe that building maintenance and facility maintenance is on there. They were kind of forced into that and inherited those positions and had to kind of learn as they went. No one could have projected the amount of problems we've had with our facility. You all know better than I do how much money has gone into it in the last 12 years. But as you can appreciate, I'm sure you can appreciate, I just need this building to work. I need it to work all day long, every day. And it hasn't, through nobody's fault specifically. But we need to make some type of change to ensure that the problems are behind us. Today may be the starting point. I was talking with somebody earlier, maybe the HVAC is fixed at this point, but who knows? We're not experts in end-of-life type, maintenance type schedules for appliances and other, structures within the facility. We rely on our partners at DPW, and for the last several years, it's been more of a reactive approach than a proactive approach. And I think when you talk about return on investment, as Ed kind of was indicating, I think that's where we can see some improvement. If we have somebody that's on top of maintenance schedules and knowing things need a replacement versus letting it get to the point where it's end of life and we're forced to spend more money on replacing items and repairing items, I think that's where we end up saving a little bit. I'm here to support DPW's proposal and answer any questions that you may have. But as you can imagine, the Administrative Services Bureau captain today is tasked with, I couldn't even come up with everything that officer is required and responsible for. It's amazing it gets done with the amount of time that the last 4 Administrative Services captains have had to spend on the facility itself. And even since we've been in these discussions just last week or the week before, the elevator, who would have thought, right? Administrative Services captain spends the better part of 2 days trying to figure out scheduling pressure tests, state inspections, and it's just not that person's role. And again, it was a very reactive thing that came up just by chance. And I think if we had somebody that was overseeing that and in touch with those different areas of the building on a regular basis, I don't see us facing these types of issues the way they've presented themselves in the last few years. So happy to answer your questions.
Do we have any recourse against the company that put in the copper pipe with the wrong solder?
Not that I'm aware of, not at this time, no. I don't think there's a way to go after them for work that was done 12 plus years ago. Have to go and see the subcontractor that was that had done the work, but that has been asked a couple times, especially the different chiefs that have been through the process with us.
This whole building seems like a black hole. I mean, we renovated this, 10, 15 years ago. It was supposed to be state of the art, and it's the biggest piece of junk I've ever seen. Do you know what happened, or does anybody know what happened?
I choose that answer very carefully as I'm going to say this.
I know.
Not being involved with the construction of the building, not knowing exactly who it was that was involved, there probably could have been some different decisions made with the type of mechanical systems that were installed. That could have helped us. But I do believe there was decisions that were made based on information provided on different equipment that they used. That equipment's not standing the test of time.
I just have 3 observations. The first is, as Paul said, is everybody admits that this building's systems are a challenge. And we're putting Band-Aids on them, so I applaud the notion that we have to get ahead of it rather than remain behind it. Short of replacing the building, you've got to live with the building and do the best you can. So that's what you guys are trying to do. So I applaud that effort. So that's my first observation. My second observation is process. Sounds like you guys have been thinking about how to attack this since March. And we've had since Thursday to think about whether this is the right solution. So it would have been helpful to have been part of the process, especially when we're proposing to bring on 2 FTEs, which, as we know, when you bring in a $250,000 in a year, that's a $2 to $3 million decision at a minimum over the life of those employees or those that replace those employees. So it would have been helpful to have more than 5 days to think about this. So, given the fact that we've only had a few days to think about this, my third observation is I'm struggling with the notion that I love the fact that the mechanic is a pooled resource and can be allocated where demand is required, right? I'm struggling with the fact that the facilities manager is not a pooled resource, and that a year or 2 years down the road, when this individual gets ahead and is scheduling maintenance, preventative maintenance, is on the capital budgeting process, is managing is all of that, he's or she is within the police department unable to provide any kind of resource to the rest of the town, even though that job now may be not a 40-hour-a-week job. It might be a 20-hour-a-week job. So, and someone might say we can change it down the road if it makes sense to change it down the road. I'd rather get it right to begin with. So having a couple of days to think about this, that's my question or my observation. And whether you guys thought about whether that individual could also be a pooled resource. Wherever they report to, that's not of my concern. But that maybe the first couple of years, it's 90 to 100% a police department position, but there's an ability to reallocate that time as demands change. So I guess that's my question. Have you thought about that, and what's the answer to that?
To be honest with you, yes, we did at the beginning. We started with this position as a part-time, 20 hours a week type of thing, something that would assist the PD. And the further and further we dug into the tasks that this person would do at this time, we all felt that it needed to be upgraded to a full-time position. That was something that came over multiple meetings. I'm sorry you folks weren't involved as of March. I do believe we started to look at this, though, towards the end of the fiscal year. It was more of a July, August thing. We started to have meetings about it. But we did look at having him as a pooled resource. But again, looking at that building specifically at this moment in time, we didn't feel it was a 1 or 2 year approach. There's a 5 or 6 year plan that has to be put together for that building. And it needs to be managed by somebody that knows what they're doing. And that's kind of why we felt it should be not a pooled resource at this time. The other one was, to be honest with you, the other one was a no-brainer. I know where we need our resources. I know what I have right now as a mechanic. I know there's things that we can do over there and get to other things. Right now, my gut feeling is I just need a strong person in that PD to get it back on track and get it out of the black hole that we call her. We've been throwing money into it now since I've been here. And I want to succeed in this building, and that's kind of why I wanted to focus that one person at this time to do that.
Do the people with the necessary skills, are they available?
That's a very good question. I think I mentioned it to Jen today. Presenting this to the boards, getting the buy-in. People, they always say it's difficult to get that because different people think of different things and have different comments. It's going to be harder to find the personnel. It's going to be difficult right now to find the technical skills. But the one thing I do have is the ability to network. I have other contacts in other places. We've been able to draw on that to get to good people that come here and work. So that's what I'm hoping to be able to do, along with some of the people that work for me. They've been in other places and other building facilities and worked with other people too. We're just going to have to get the word out there to get some good people to come and interview for it. Both positions, to be honest with you.
I've just hired one in Trumbull over the past year, and the pool was very small. You might consider it a puddle.
No, I agree. It's going to be a very, very tight race to get someone in here. But again, this is, I throw this out there, this is Darien. There are a lot of people that want to come and work here. Just finding the right technical skill set in that personnel is going to be important.
What is that skill set, Ed? What are you looking for? Like if somebody dropped you a resume, what's it look like that fits this position? Facilities, you got the, I'm sorry, the coordinator.
If I was to stand up and put him next to me, you'd be looking at Tony Campanella's twin, because that's what I want. I want somebody that can handle contractors, vendors, somebody that can handle the budget, knows his way around the technical parts of a building, has been doing it for quite a few years. That can come out of a property management group, or that can come out of a technical person that does HVAC work, that does the budgetary and bidding for that type of group. You may find somebody there, but that's kind of who I'm looking for this.
So, Ed, on that, like, is the person you're looking for someone with a management skill set to kind of manage others and so forth, or a person that actually, kind of will proverbially turn the wrench as well?
It would be nice if they could turn the wrench, if they could, change a light socket, change a light switch. I mean, that would be great. But first and foremost, he's there to manage the facility and direct the custodians, making sure that building is functioning. You shouldn't, and this proposal shows that we don't want to have the police department administration doing any of that work. It's not their expertise.
Yeah, I think to Paul's point and Dan's point, I mean, this is like 12 years old, this renovation, and I feel like in the last 10 years I've been on this board, I feel like we've almost rebuilt the thing, like piece by piece again. And so there's at least I don't know if it's expectation or hope, and I know hope isn't a strategy, but like we've done so much, okay, in terms of expanding it, changing it, male, female locker room expansions, heat, electric, everything. It seems like there's got to be a point where we've kind of fixed everything, because we've almost replaced every single position, every single like kind of mechanical function. And so I guess my question is, like, even a little bit to Dan's, like, going forward, is this 2 or 3 more years of begrudgingly kind of getting through all these things that may pop up, that you continue to find the copper pipes and so forth? And then does it settle down into less of a full-time role? Like, just looking at some of the hours, and when I see things like employee management, sort of 10 hours a week, 25% of the hours a week, like, how many employees will this individual have reporting into them? Is like just the 1.5 janitors, or the?
Yep, as of right now, yeah. And, that part of it, I say it was a struggle, but putting the custodians under there, taking that out from the administrative captain, that was the easy part. It's making sure that once you set them to do the jobs, well, you've got to check up on them too. But then again, you're going around the building and working on other things, or putting together other items that need to be worked on. So your job is that build. I wish I could tell you and be able to forecast, and I know I can't, but I don't see it as 2 or 3 years. I actually see it as a little bit longer. And I want it to be a little longer, because I want to stretch things out. I want to get the equipment to last longer. So that preventive maintenance is going to get that out of the equipment if we can get in there and actually start doing it. The elevator is a perfect example. That's preventive maintenance. It shouldn't pop up. You should be waiting at the door for that guy to show up. And then to have the captain scrambling, I'm pretty sure he had other police things that he should be doing. He didn't get done. Now he's working on the building.
Who was responsible for that oversight before? Was it the DPW mechanic, or was it the administrative captain?
Which oversight of what?
The maintenance projects that never got attention before they went broke.
As far as I know, the administrative captain and PD handled all of the projects. We were over there assisting them on a regular basis.
But the number one reason you cited for this new position is that the Director of Public Works and Facility Supervisor no longer provide oversight for the management.
Sure, and we've sat in on multiple meetings with vendors and contractors to provide technical oversight that the PD didn't have.
But the oversight was in your camp, or it was in the police department's camp?
It's in the PD camp. We assisted them in doing it. So that was oversight that we provided.
So this is a PD project, and I completely agree, they need somebody to make this run better, because we vote on money for this facility all day long every year. And I agree, it should not be the administrative captain. I agree there should be a resource for the DPD, but this is not a DPW project, this is a DPD project, correct? But you're asking for heads for DPW, so I'm confused.
Yes.
I think we need to focus on the DPD, if that's what really needs to be addressed. And it's surprising to me that you'd come from more than one full head to address one facility. I think it seems reasonable to me that someone should be able to go in there and identify problems, fix them, and schedule the fixing of them and oversee that fixing of them. Is that crazy?
But I think one is a facility, the other one's a like auto mechanic, right?
No, it's a facilities mechanic.
The
The current
facility
one that we
mechanic,
have
okay.
now. And the current one we have right now spends more than half his time over there. And I can't afford to do that anymore, not with all the other buildings we have and the properties we've just taken on.
Right, so a dedicated person, it makes sense.
So what we're trying to do is eliminate that facilities coordinator coming in and going, okay, who's gonna do the work? Okay, let me call the vendor. And with the second position, that's going to eliminate a lot of that work.
I think what we're looking at is, police is getting a coordinator, right, a full-time. Someone like Chief Anderson used to talk about it all the time, right? We've been in meetings. Dan and I think you and I actually did a tour one time, if I remember, going all the way upstairs. There's always been this kind of missing body, if you want to call it that, right? It's always been kind of plugged by various people within the police department. What we're doing is we're putting a full-time coordinating person in the police department. So it's not chief, it's not everybody down there, this person could be doing the job. And they're more of a coordinator. I think the title is perfect, right? It's a coordinator. But then you're asking for half a body, right? That's a mechanic that is going to be splitting, lack of a better word, 20 hours a week at the police and 20 hours anything else that you need,
Yep.
right? I have a bunch of questions, but one of them is who, if it's a conflict, right? If police needs the person for 20 hours, does it override what you need for DPW?
This is the mechanic you're talking about.
Right, the mechanic.
Mechanic.
Right,
So-
because at some point, the coordinator's gonna go, I know you're looking for somebody who can, fix a light bulb, but if they can't, and it's a
Yeah, of
little
course.
bit more, and you need a mechanic,
Yeah.
they're gonna basically pick up the phone and call the new person and go, or however you guys have to fix this out, like, you guys have to figure out responsibilities.
And that's a
Right.
very important communication component to this whole thing.
Right.
Anthony Campanella will have control over both of those. He will work closely with the new facility coordinator. He will help set priorities with the facility coordinator, and he will understand that our commitment, we're not running away from this, is to make sure that that facility is working properly. So if the coordinator calls up and goes, look, I need a hand with this has happened, and I have to send them both over there, facility mechanics, so that's what I'll do.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing. But we've been doing it with Band-Aids. We've been just getting over there in time to stop it from being, the worst thing that could happen. And then we're going back with a capital request for funds to fix it. I'm trying to get away from that. But I've made a commitment to the chief, and I made a commitment to the first selectman, that that building would be a priority. And I think we all understand. It's been a priority all along. It's now sucked the time from my facility mechanic to where I'm not getting a benefit anyplace else in town. And that's important.
Does the police department currently have a preventive maintenance schedule or plan? Or do you just repair things as they come up?
To that extent, I think it would involve the contractors and the vendors that we have under contract to be responsible for regularly scheduled visits. Outside of that, nobody in-house. Public Works may have a better idea of when certain things need to be serviced, but for the most part, our specialty equipment, generators, fire suppression systems, ACs and server rooms and stuff, that's all kind of on the shoulders of the vendors that we contract with, to my knowledge.
Well, do you have a list of equipment that needs to be maintained? And how often you have to change filters or change connections or anything like that? Replace
Not to my
hoses?
knowledge. Do not.
Well, I'm pretty disappointed.
Who drafted the roles and responsibilities of these two people?
Ms. Mr. Campanello and myself, and with the assistance from the captain, Mastriani.
So the DPD was involved in that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We vetted that among both departments and the town administrator and the first selectman in reviewing what you see in front of you to make sure that we were all on board and supportive of the roles that were going to be taken on.
So they want a full-time person that doesn't fix anything, but just does oversight and coordination?
Basically, a project manager for that building is what you're looking at. And somebody that's putting together the budget that is presented to you folks every season. Putting together the capital plan, working with the operating budget also.
This may be a loaded question, but how many, Tony's head of facilities, he's a facility coordinator for everything else, right? How many buildings does Tony oversee and do all of this for? Excluding Great Island, which he seems to be another full-time job.
Excluding Great Island?
Yeah.
Including the Peace Department, the majority of the large buildings are 5. 2 of them are train stations. PD, Town Hall, DPW garage.
And what about on Parks and Rec facilities? Do they have their own facilities coordinator?
Not that I'm aware of.
So when something breaks, like at the beach, does that fall underneath you as well?
We get the phone call.
So Tony kind of oversees?
He'll send Dave down to help, or sometimes it's a phone call right to Dave, and he's our facility mechanic. He will go down and assist them.
I think my view is, and again, this is, I guess, more a question of whether, you said from the mechanic side, you need an extra mechanic. And that extra mechanic is probably going to spend roughly half his time fixing things at PD, right? But if there's other things to be fixed, nothing to be fixed there, he's going to be fixing everything else.
Correct.
When I think about sort of, those 5 buildings plus whatever Parks and Rec plus all the stuff going on at Great Island that's falling under Tony, and I think about like DPD, do you need a person full-time there? Or could it actually be alleviating, like you're doing with mechanics, some of the other work that needs to be done over
Can I
town?
just, to follow up on that, because that was the point I was making. And I know, you do a time allocation.
Yeah.
It's not precise.
No.
I know that. You're trying to estimate. But budget planning and managing 3 hours a week, that's 150 hours a year on the budget. I mean, come on. And, employee management, 10 hours a week when you have 1.5. So I'm really struggling with how this is a 40-hour-a-week position forever, okay? Because it will likely be forever. If we allocate the FTE, it's not likely to be reassigned 5 years from now and half of that position go to you and half stay in the police department. That person's gonna be there in perpetuity. So so you mentioned that early on, there was a conversation that this could be either a part-time or a pooled resource. You have an immense amount of credibility with me and this entire board. So you just do. How did you get comfortable with that? Because, I mean, I just can't see it.
We tried running the model at part-time, and it just didn't relieve the pressure that we were under now, myself and Tony included, and the captain, enough to understand that we are going to succeed with what we propose. And with that said, a part-time to a full-time was the step. What do you get when you make it a full-time? And with regards to the budget, we're not looking at numbers that we propose. We're looking at the allocations and how they're spent. We're looking at this facility coordinator actually taking care of invoices, looking at contracts, schedule of values, making sure they're making payments, making sure those values match. So the budget means he's actually looking at all the numbers that's associated with the work that's going on, properly negotiating contracts with the vendors. That's part of the budget process. Those things are all included. It's what the captain's doing now. I'm sorry, he shouldn't be doing that.
But you're saying that they're effectively asking for 1.5 heads to manage their building.
Yes.
Is that true? Chief Marin?
Well, that was the proposal that we agreed to. It's not that we left it to the experts to come up with the proposal. Those were, and not that we disagree, we support it, but
It seems like one person should be able to manage a building. if that's all they have to do, right? I don't know.
To me, it seems like it should be less than one person. It should, even this building, that's what I still just can't, I just can't get over it. And Jim, the point you were making is we have all these other buildings and parks and et cetera, facilities in town. Those are being managed by one person.
Yeah.
And we've got this one building, albeit complicated, underperforming from a systems perspective, et cetera, and we're gonna put 1.5 people on that building
Yeah.
alone. It
also feels-
it defies kind of common sense logic. It just, and again, we haven't been privy to the working sessions that got you comfortable with that.
Mhm.
So we're just, maybe we're not able to bridge it in just a conversation on a Tuesday evening.
Maybe we should have a tour of the facility to better understand it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my opinion is, like, if the question was, like, we need another facilities mechanic, kind of, listening to the hours that you need across the town, right? Or these 5 facilities, whatever you guys have to do, or doing now in Great Island and the other, like, Parks and Rec facilities that you guys get called on. Having one extra head that's able to do all that, it sounds like what this person is, including a lot of extra time and care that the police station takes. I think it's on the management side, where we're hiring like another Tony, and we know how incredible his bandwidth is. Do we, to take a whole nother Tony, it felt like, and put it on at just EPD sounded like a lot. I guess that's how I think about it. Maybe I just know how much Tony does, and I have now come to just assume guys like him can handle like 5, 6, 7 buildings,
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. We've been doing a lot.
So I guess the question is, now, one new person for just EPD, not questioning like the need for extra facilities, sort of oversight. Just the question whether it's a whole one needs to be allocated there. And you can't just say you need 0.6 there, because I agree, you do get a different benefit from, I think, a part-time employee versus a full-time when you're at that level of sort of responsibility and skill set, but.
But you could take a full-time person and allow that individual to work on non-PD projects, like oversee projects like a bridge project, where you're stretched already, instead of that individual not leaving the building, because that's his job or her job. So,
I understand where you're going. It would just be tough to find a person that can do both of those things.
I think we
See if
can-
you could put Tony Campanella out in a bridge project on Hanson Road. I don't think I could do that. I don't think he has the technical skills to do that. So that's 2 different personnel. I do understand the premise that you're looking at the part-time, full-time, and you have some good questions there.
It does seem inefficient too to have 2 different people trying to achieve the same goal of running the DPD efficiently. Like, it seems to me someone should be the one that notices that something is leaking, goes in there, figures out what it is, maybe fixes it on his own. If he can't fix it, knows who to call, oversees that process, soup to nuts, right, beginning to end, rather than calling to make sure that the guy that's over at DPW is available to come, hoping that he is, and then we're paying 2 different, it doesn't make sense to me. If the town needs another mechanic, I also understand that, but that's a separate argument. I think if we're trying to solve a DPD problem tonight, it seems like a one-head allocation makes the most sense to me.
Hey, have we ever, I guess I'll use the word, charted how much time is spent on all the projects there? Like, how many calls you get, what problems went wrong, how long did it take to fix, like,
Question.
in all the discussions, your first one, Board of Selectmen, all the comments tonight, to me, it's, you're trying to solve for a problem, right? The problem is, this building it's got a bunch of problems, and it's costing us blah dollars and blah time, right? So and this kind of like, using that as a model, then we're asking for a coordinator because of all those issues. There's a part of me that just goes, have we spent 300 hours at that place, or you've called over, 2 people to work on X, Y, Z vision, or a problem? Do we have any of that? Like, have we documented anything like that? Or
Unfortunately,
is it
no.
3 hours, because that kind of starts my thought process.
Sure.
And then I think you guys bring up some really good point. There's a part of me that almost thinks, and I kind of said this at the beginning, we know that place has tons of problems. It had problems I mean, 7 years, I think I've been on the commit, on the police budget, right? I think you were on, right, at one point. There's a part of me that just thinks it's almost like, I hate to use this word, consultant, to come in and
Yeah.
have a list of what systems do you have? This is a little bit what Paul was talking about, right? Like, what systems we have, what maintenance has to be done, and almost get the ground built, if you want to call it that, right?
An audit of the
Yeah, it's a little bit of an audit too, but it's also a go-to person, Dan, right? It's like, we're bringing in Paul, right? And Paul's coming in and he's gonna, and almost you go through this list, like, they become this person, almost on a trial basis. I just don't know if that's cost efficient, A, and I'm a big believer that a consultant can walk out the door and then everything you've taught somebody goes out the door with it, right? So that's kind of not feasible, but I'm struggling a little bit with what you guys talked about too, right? It's such, I actually wish I had more time to noodle it, and I kind of like your idea of looking, like walking the building again. But I'm kind of just, I'm struggling with myself, like I think some
Well,
of
if
the
there's
members
not
are.
a schedule for like maintenance and all that, and there was one, the job would be a lot easier, right? Like, once
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, that's what you were saying.
It's also a building where, like, we could sit here and go,
Yeah.
why wasn't this done and this and this and this? It's had so many problems that it almost becomes, what's the word I want to, it desensitizes you a little bit to it, right? You're like, oh God, now the HVAC doesn't work, and now this doesn't work, right? And rather than, I think you guys have tried to finally just go, enough, right? And working with a bunch of people and go, this is our solution. I think we're just struggling a little bit with, what that is. If we didn't have the coordinator, would you have still asked for the additional facility person? Or is this a project where you're like, I want somebody kind of running the coordination side, and then this body comes in and spends 20 hours a week on it?
It was an opportunity, if you will. In talking to the first selectman, it was more of, okay, let's get away from this, and if there is additional hands that you need to make this work, not just give a guy that, like you say, a consultant that comes in, sets you up on the ground floor, does all the investigative work, puts all that information together, but then applies it
Right.
on a regular basis. But making sure that if you have something that can be done in-house, who do you use? And that's where I needed that second facility mechanics. I've been needing him for a couple of years. We've just been keeping everything together. I think the transfer back in March kind of set the tone to take another hard look at this, and see what we could come up with some solutions. And this is what we came up with. This is what I thought was a good approach that I can actually bring to you folks and feel that we were going to definitely, in my opinion, succeed. And the last thing I want to do is fail at this and have you guys come back and say, well, hey, a couple of years from now, you're still in front of us asking for these emergency transfers. What happened? That's not where I want to be.
Does your team or Tony's facility team oversee, do they do any work on the 3 fire departments?
No, not unless we're really called in for something out of the ordinary, but no, not.
But do you
Very
get
rare.
called
It's
in?
very, very rare.
Okay. But you will for Parks and Rec type facilities if there's an issue there?
Absolutely, we always help out. There's no reason not to.
When I look at this specific maintenance tasks list, it's significant. And I have no problem approving you guys hiring someone to handle that. And I think that person can and should be able to handle a lot of this coordinator work as well, and probably is more efficient to do it as one person. I'm happy to vote for that all day long, if you think you can hire one person to do those 2 things. And, if you come back to us and say there is just way too much of an administrative burden placed on this person, we still need another half-time to handle the additional oversight or administrative work, then we can talk about it. But I also think that if there was a really talented person in there doing both of those things, like, scheduling, overseeing, coordinating, fixing some things on their own, that it's gonna make the administrative captain's job a lot easier for, let's say, budgeting or putting together a 6-year capital plan, because that person is all-knowing and can help inform that process. I'd like to delay that if I can, so that's my position.
John?
So this building's been a problem for a long time, as we're all aware. And what we have is sort of a kind of a perfect storm of a few features. So feature number one is this is a building that's terrible. Feature number two is how the building is overseen. So it's unique among our buildings in the sense that the operation, functionality, availability, specifications, and all that is actually directly overseen by the police. And so that's why the administrative captain has these sets of responsibilities, because this is kind of an office building. We just need to make sure we show up and the computers, printers, and lights work. That building has a whole long list of requirements that are essential to their work, in some cases mandated by state or federal law. It's got to be done in a particular way. And so what happened is, to deliver all that, the administrative captain oversees the building, and it's that person's responsibility to make sure all that stuff is, well, working according to what they need. So the way this was all managed was, we said, okay, well, the administrative captain's in charge of all this, and that person would have to oversee all aspects of that maintenance, just like you've seen on these lists, where it's vendors and anybody who comes in trying to schedule maintenance and try to keep all this pulled together with help from Public Works when you need it. So what I'd noticed over a long period of time was exactly what you guys have seen: massive capital expenditures for stuff that either was due to the faulty construction or the fact that the place had been haphazardly maintained by well-meaning but ultimately non-professional people when it comes to Public Works. So when I looked at that, I said, we can't have this anymore. It's going to cost us a ton of money, and we've been spending a lot of money. That has to come to a stop. And we actually started the process by saying, well, what if we actually take command of the building, right, in terms of the Public Works aspect of that? We'll take that away from the administrative captain and give it directly to Ed and say, Ed, you just manage the building, and the chief is your customer, or the administrative captain is your customer. And we went through the dynamics of what that would be like. Well, first of all, they've got a capacity problem to begin with Great Island and all the other demands on their time. And then you'd say, well, if we were to do that, they were going to have to hire additional people anyway to manage that building as well, because they really weren't doing that. I mean, you would show up occasionally or be part of discussions dealt with vendors, but this really was about the administrative captain overseeing a whole lot of vendors for which he had no real professional background or experience. And so knowing intuitively that, well, I've got to ask for this maintenance program, or I got to make sure that this particular contract with this vendor is done right. No, right? It was enough just to have a list of vendors, and not to say that these captains were not capable of doing that, but it's just too much. And so when we discussed this first option, it was very clear that that was not going to work with Public Works. There was no way that they could both bring on the personnel that they needed to do this and then report directly to the chief or the administrative captain for what they needed for this building. It was very clear from those discussions that the direct oversight and responsibility for managing the facility itself needed to rest with the police department, which then got to option number two, which is what we're discussing now. Well, if that's the case, why don't we actually put Public Works inside the building and have that person report to the captain and keep track of all the stuff that we just talked about. And we ultimately felt that that was going to be the right mix of work, right? It would completely absolve Ed and Tony of managing that building, except for one thing, which I'll get to in a minute, and also give the administrative captain sort of one neck to choke on everything. And not just that person, but anyone in the department who's got a maintenance problem, something's not working right, this cooling doesn't work, that something else, there's a single person to call to coordinate all of it. Now, over time, based on what I've seen inside the building and extensive conversations with them, this job could be a full-time job for years, just because of not just the complexity of the building, but the requirements that the department has for that. As for the second sort of half-time person, that's where you do have some flexibility. This person, the lead person will be non-rep, so will not unionized. The second person is going to be part of the Public Works union. And so right now, the allocation would be 50% to the police department. Could that flux up or down depending on what's required? Yeah, that's actually a resource that's much more easily deployed. But remember, this resource is going to come in and fill in where we don't have contractors, or potentially even replace some contractors, right? Right now, there's a lot of the work that's being done by a whole series of contractors that today are not well coordinated or managed. By having this sort of additional resource, kind of to be determined by this lead person, but perhaps some of the work that's being contracted out could be replaced or done by this person. So net, there could be some savings there, but we're really not going to know until somebody who has a sole responsibility of managing that building, responsible to a single boss, the administrative captain, can come in and get their hands around this building and live with it. As far as getting a consultant, just in these conversations, it became very clear to me that one of the ways that you start to get your mind around this building is you just have to own it. It can't be somebody who comes in and says, well, here's a list of vendors and excuse me, things that you need to change. You actually need to be there every day. You need to live that building, just like we do in our own homes. You know what's what with all the mechanical systems in your home because you've been there and you live it every day. This is the same thing with this building, particularly a unique building that's got new stuff that doesn't work, old stuff that doesn't work. It's a complete mess. If I'd known 10 years ago, I think all of us, that it would have turned out this way. Hindsight isn't exact science. We wouldn't have done it, but we did. And now we need a better model, I think, to deal with it. And we've been through these two options and have thought about it pretty extensively. I don't see another way to manage it and preserve the police administrative structure that you have to have over this building that keeps the oversight with that, with the police department, while liaisoning with the Public Works team. The last thing I wanted to say was just about hierarchy and oversight. Once you have these two hires in place, it's not like they're going to be abandoned and nobody's going to talk to them. Ed's been very clear throughout this process. This is a small town, everybody knows everybody. They're going to be available to help them at all times, and will particularly help this person as they're getting up to speed on the building. But over time, having a professional there to sort of assume direct control over all this will give us all peace of mind that this building is professionally managed, particularly in terms of costs and maintenance and all that, while at that same time giving the chief the peace of mind that he's got a building that he manages and oversees directly with a team that reports to him that delivers what they have to have in order to have an effective police department. So in conclusion, I've spent a lot of time on this. I've talked to these guys at length. I don't see another way to do this. I can appreciate the consideration that we might hire one and not the other and delay it and think about it and all of that. But my recommendation to you is that you just rip the Band-Aid off, go ahead and hire these two people and let this process move forward. I've sat in your chair before. I will pinch pennies until they scream, and I do not like to hire people if it's not necessary. But in my judgment, after having looked at this, I think this is a reasonable request, and I'd recommend your approval.
Questions for John?
Just one question, John. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
No charge.
Well, so the first part where you said you did look at whether just have the police building, the police department be a customer of it in Public Works. Did you look at hiring two people? So where you kind of lost me a little bit was they didn't have the resources to do that. I know there are other things about kind of command and control of the building itself, and we have the resources in our control. We're not just a customer, but this is an employee that we have, you know, I think you used a choke metaphor or something like that.
One neck
know
to
which
choke.
throat to choke. Yeah. But
Palin.
if these two people were in DPW, one of which was dedicated virtually full-time, but flexible as those needs might change over time to moderate that amount of time spending. So if you just took these two individuals, put them in DPW, and didn't change their responsibilities on day one other than what's outlined here, but again, there'd be flexibility to modify them as needs might change. Did you examine that? And how?
Yes. I think if you have that model, you ultimately will confuse the oversight. My experience with these things, generally, not with regard to mechanical stuff, is that it needs to be one or the other. It can't be both. So if you have this person as part of Department of Public Works, we have one Director of Public Works, and that's Ed, and that person has to report to Ed. We can't have at the same time saying, well, this person oversees the police department and they report to the administrative captain. In my judgment, you need to pick one or the other. And so we looked at both of those options, whether this person would be part of DPW or this person would be part of the police department. And on balance, given the requirements of the building and the fact that it's a it is unique in almost every regard compared to all of our other public works buildings. The answer that it seemed pretty clear to all of us, and it was unanimous, that this really needed to report to the police. Ergo, that position actually resides in the department itself, right? But there's actually going to be space for that person to sit in the department, and that's where they'll be all day. As far as very long term and making sure that this person is fully utilized, I assure you we're going to be looking at this, and if there is some future where it's clear that they've straightened out all these problems and we need some different model, there's no chance that we're going to have somebody sitting there working 20 hours a week and collecting 40 hours worth of pay if it comes to that. So I wouldn't worry about that. We're going to continue to look at this, and both the chief as well as Ed, they're going to manage that position very carefully. There's no place in town that we tolerate that, and we're not going to start here. But for the first few years, based on what I've seen and read about this portion will be fully subscribed. There's no doubt about that. I would separate also this notion of the sort of facilities mechanic. Again, this person is going to be part of the Public Works Union, splitting time between the department and other assignments that Ed might have. This is, as I said before, where we've got some flexibility in terms of how that person's deployed. I think Ed used the word before that there was an opportunity here to fill part of the gap in terms of the workload that those guys face townwide, while at the same time saying, let's start with an initial allocation of 50% to the police department and try to relieve some of the burden there, and maybe, frankly, replace some of the contract work over there that's going on today.
Was it considered, I agree that the person should be a part of DPD, live there, breathe there, that's their employee. Was it considered that that person does both mechanic work and oversight coordination?
It's hard to find somebody that you come in and say, you're going to be in a supervisory role. I need you to strategize about where we need to make investments. I need you to think about what we're going to do for capital budgeting. And I also need some recommendations on some of this vendor contract language. Could you please sort through that? And by the way, the toilet's leaking. Could you please take this wrench and fix that? In my discussions with those guys, there's enough of a difference in skill sets, but also mindset, job expectations, that it's going to be hard to find somebody who's going to play that coordinating role, which, again, based on what I've been told, has quite a bit of sophistication in it in terms of what you have to understand, the interactions you have to have. That person reasonably could be presenting to this board at some point, talking about particular capital plans with the department. You can envision all of that, and the person's got to put together a meaningful budget for the administrative captain to review. I think it's probably unreasonable for that person to be also the person that would be down in the bowels working on a plumbing problem or trying to reconnect damaged equipment in some ways. Not that they couldn't do it, it's just that you're going to have a mechanic do that work. We don't have any of that in DPW right now. If you've got somebody who's a supervisor, I don't know that those roles cross over at all. You just don't see that, correct?
Well, listen,
Fair question.
John, I think this was very helpful. I guess I certainly buy on to the fact that we can't, it's either kind of 0 or 1. Hiring sort of a part-time person, I think, doesn't necessarily work. What I do think is going to be key here is like with the mechanic, right? Somebody that can do both, right? Can understand that building very quickly, but help, Tony and Ed with all the other million things that you need to do. And I think given that, at least, we expect or hope that this building is not going to continue to have the major projects going on, I can support it. I would ask, with sort of the promise that as we get 1 or 2 years down the road, we continue to look at, is this person really being fully utilized? And so I think what it gets down to, it's part of the money, but it's also who you actually hire. So I would just say it's a very specialized role and specialized sort of reporting roles and so forth. Take a lot of time and care in terms of who you actually choose to make sure it's the right person that fits into what I think is already a very good public works team.
100%. That's absolutely job one. Paul?
You said we have a lot of old stuff, we have a lot of new stuff. I'd just like to, if I vote for this, I'd like the new hire to make a list of the stuff.
Well,
And then periodically, how frequently should we look at this stuff to see if it needs preventive or corrective maintenance? When I was in the service, all the equipment under my my control, had a detailed list and scheduled maintenance either daily, monthly, or quarterly. And we should set up a program like this so we don't end up with this mess that we have in a new building that I voted for years ago before anybody on this board was on this board.
Yeah, I think a few of us were responsible for those votes. So anybody who steps into a role like that is going to play kind of the role that Rob articulated, which is what the hell do I have here? What is all the equipment? Who are all the vendors? What are their maintenance schedules? And try to get their mind around sort of the totality of the building, its components, and everybody who's involved and integrated with that. I would say there's not a single person in the world who would take on this job and not have that assignment as job one. But if there's any doubt, we will confirm that. And I think Tony has that for every building that he maintains. We just don't have it for this building because of this unique oversight structure that we have. And this solution addresses that while allowing us to preserve the oversight structure that I think is important.
And I think getting that planning and the way that person will go about looking at that building and creating a 5-10 year forecast of all the stuff that needs to be done, the same way like Ed and Tony do that.
Yep.
And so that we're thinking about all the buildings in the same kind of cadence, same kind of standard of care.
Well, and the efficiency
Will be-
that you guys expect, so and that it's totally fair.
It sounds like, we don't have a coordinator right now. We also don't have a dedicated mechanic right now. I would suggest to this board that we approve the coordinator and you try to hire someone that can do some of that work. And if you end up needing another head for public works, and maybe to dedicate more hours of that type of work to the DPD, we consider that separately. I think to approve both of these is a major amount of money. Over time, it's a lot of dollars. And I think it's not well.
If I thought that the hiring of the coordinator or the senior role was inefficient in any way, or at least not the best solution that we could come up with for oversight of that building, I would not be standing here. I think the same thing about the part-time mechanic. If you look at the demands for that level of staff under Ed's jurisdiction, not just for the existing buildings, but for everything that we've got prospectively at Great Island and even currently at Great Island, I don't know how they actually get done what they have to get done today. And keep in mind that this additional mechanic, there is the prospect that that person's going to replace work being done by contractors that we're paying for today and maybe paying for inefficiently because nobody's actually gone out and reviewed these contracts. And so and I'm 100% confident of this, when this person comes on board, we're going to save money in the long run. We're potentially going to save money in the short run on these contracts, and both these roles will be fully subscribed. I mean, nobody is going to have any spare time. I mean, you could delay the hiring of one of these mechanics, but that means that we're not going to be able to get shed of any contractor work, right? Because all of this work is going to have to be done through contractors. And we may not have the mechanical resources in terms of mechanics to show up at the DPW or the police department if this coordinator identifies work to be done, in which case he's going to have to do it through a third party. I just think it's going to be more expensive for this person, particularly if they identify more work that needs to be done urgently to solve some maintenance problems. If Ed says, well, I've got all these other urgent problems, I can't spare mechanical resources to help you, the coordinator's going to say, fine, then I'm going to double up on contractors, which he can do. I personally just think it's going to be more expensive than this too high a route that we're discussing.
I think inherently there is some savings in here, right? And when you were talking about a couple of minutes ago that some of this work is being done by contractors, maybe Ed, you had said it, or Chief, maybe you said, there feels like there's some, I just don't know what the payback is, right? I don't know if it's 10 grand and offsetting the 275.
Sure, not zero, but
Right.
Absolutely.
There's some in there, but to your point, there may be some more outlays first to try to get back to like a normal figure, if you want to call it, going forward, so, yeah.
Can we separate the vote on the two positions?
We absolutely can, if we want, right, Jen?
Yeah, you have the two separate amounts of.
Yeah. I will say, I support both of these. I think, I think the time has come, we need it. I don't usually hear, when I hear John and Ed advocating for this, Ed's not, feels like they're advocating pretty hard and they thought about this kind of long and hard, and there are two full-time jobs, one of which is just going to add to our existing facilities mechanics, but it feels like this is something that we need to, we're hearing that they need. So, why don't we, on this, the motion is for, so just as a reminder, right, Board of Selectmen approved this. This has to go to the RTM because the money's coming out of the general fund, right, Jen?
Correct.
So while this is sort of like an off-cycle decision, and I think what we're hearing here, and there's a lot of conversation at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, because this does sort of affect the budget going forward, this is why I think it is good that it's going to the RTM, and we're not just funding it out of our contingency. So I think what I'll do is, we'll split these first with the full-time salary position for $50,000, right, to fund the full-time salary for the.
That's the coordinator.
The facilities coordinator.
That's a coordinator, half-time, well, for half year.
Sorry. Okay, so it's coming out of, it's going into full-time salary. Okay, so the first motion I'll accept is a $50,000 transfer, or I should say appropriation, from fund balance to go to full-time salary for the facilities coordinator for a half year starting on January 1. Okay, Taylor moves, Rob seconds. I think we've had a fair amount of discussion, so we can vote. All those in favor? Okay, are those opposed? Okay, 5-1. Okay. So the second is going to be to transfer $39,115, to appropriate $39,115 from the general fund to full-time building management for the facility mechanic. Dan moves, Rob seconds. All those in favor? Okay. All those against? Okay. Okay, so both of those. Chief, Ed, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. This is, we all, as do you, look very seriously at FTEs, and I appreciate, listen, I listened to you for 40 minutes on the Board of Selectmen's meeting. I know there's going to be a couple RTM committee meetings, so I appreciate you guys, you don't always come here asking for extra FTEs, but when you do, you come with a lot of data and a lot of thought, so thank you. Okay. So guys, next item on the agenda is we're going to discuss and take action on on filling an appointment to the vacant seat on the Board of Finance, which was created by John Walcott stepping down. So what I'd like to do first is entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of contemplating an appointment. Paul moves, Rob seconds. All those in favor?
John's office?
What?
Are we going to John's office?
Yes, we're going to John's office. So we're now stand in executive session. You can see on the Board of Finance seat, as I mentioned earlier, John Walcott, who served with us for almost 3 years, stepped down early. I coordinated with the RTC, who I know interviewed a number of different people, and they sent a recommendation letter I sent around to you all earlier. They interviewed and recommended Jenny Schwartz, who's currently one of the members of the RTM, serves on the board on the Finance and Budget Committee and so forth. And so I would like to recommend that we, in order to vote to fill John's vacancy, we vote for Jenny Schwartz. So I'd like to nominate Jenny Schwartz.
Second.
Dan seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Welcome.
Jenny, congratulations. Your first 2 jobs are you're going to need to go down to Krista, our town clerk, and fill out some paperwork there, and probably have to sadly resign from the RTM at the same time. But we look forward to having you join us as soon as you kind of get sworn in and all of that.
Pleasure's mine.
At our next meeting.
Thank you.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is to discuss and take action on request to increase the administrative transfer authority from $5,000 to $6,250.
So last month when we met, you did ask me to take a look at this, something we haven't looked at since December 2017. That was the last time we made any changes to the transfer authority. Per town charter, the Board of Finance has the authority to make budget transfers between accounts, but the Board of Finance has granted that authority to the Director of Finance and the Town Administrator for transfers up to $5,000 and under certain circumstances that are outlined on the second page of the memo. As I said, that was last updated in 2017. What I'm requesting at this time is an increase of 25%, so we go from 5,000 to 6,250. That's slightly less than what inflation has been since January 2018 to September 2024, so I think it's a fair marker of how much we're asking to approve kind of the same amount as we did back in 2017 when we set this. And just looking back at fiscal 2024, there were only 3 that fell into the range between 5,000 and 6,250. But that does help us at the end of the year to be more efficient in closing out the books. And it takes, would have taken 3 transfers off of your agenda. So I think it's a fair balance of efficiency, but also making sure that you continue to have the oversight that you should have on the accounts. So this is where we could discuss adding a temporary allowance for administrative transfers among already appropriated ARPA accounts to expire December 31st. That'll get us through the obligation period.
Got it. And do we need to say that you move them into that sewer I&I? Is that definitely sort of what the backfill is going to be? Do you want flexibility to move it into?
Let's allow flexibility because maybe the generator comes in at 80,100 and I want to be able to just move money into there. But if we don't have it somewhere else, the sewer I&I is going to be our in and out account.
Well, I'd support moving from any of the projects that are kind of coming in under to any of the other projects we have appropriated, so long as they weren't, materially changing it, that we weren't going from a generator to a power station.
Right, or we were going to buy a Ford Escape and now we decided we're going to buy a Tesla. Well, technically, we said we were going to buy a car. It wouldn't be something like that. So I'm not quite sure how we want to word that, but I completely agree with the spirit of that.
And so we need to vote to increase this from 5,000 to 6,250 as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And what I'm proposing is just changing the dollar limit, but keeping all the same criteria and requirements.
Okay. Well, I certainly support that. Any other questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Dan, make a motion to increase the administrative transfer authority from 5,000 to 6,250.
Moved.
Dan moves. Malin seconds. All those in favor? Okay. And I'd actually like to make a motion to permit staff to reallocate funds within the ARPA budget from certain projects to already approved projects.
Do we have to add that to the agenda like we did before and then vote on it?
Is that an administrative transfer or no?
We probably should add it because the item specifically said the 5,000 to 6,250.
Okay. Well, then let me recall that motion and make a motion to add an item to the agenda. After item 6, that would be to discuss and take action on allowing administrative staff to be able to reallocate funds within the ARPA budget between now and the end of the year. Okay? All those in favor of adding to the agenda? Okay, it's passed. Okay, so after item 6 will now be to, I'll make a motion to permit staff to make administrative transfers within the ARPA budget from already approved projects to other already approved projects between now and the end of the year, between now and December 31st. Dan moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor? Great. Financial reports?
I'm not going to talk a lot. Property taxes slightly behind where we've been in prior years, but the tax collector at this time is not concerned. Investment income, we've achieved slightly more than 31% of our budget. However, we wouldn't expect that to be a run rate. We get our big tax inflow in July, so as we spend that down, we make less. We'll get another inflow in January, but we also have declining rates. And then on building permit revenue, we did budget $500,000 for permit revenue from the redevelopment projects. Through September, we've taken in $24,000 on those projects. The expenditures for the general fund are tracking as expected. At the moment, we don't see any big surprises there. We do have a fair amount of vacancies in the police department, particularly in dispatch. State revenues are coming in as expected. Really, truly was not much of note. Active bonded projects, because we took action last month on the roof and skylight projects for Julian Homes. Those are now off our schedule, so it's a little smaller. And then what I handed out to you on Great Island is the monthly update that we've been doing. It still shows that we anticipate an over expenditure of about $279,000, but a lot of these are still placeholder numbers. So in the detail, based on our conversation last week, I renamed the first column, this is to be spent, whether it's an estimate or the balance on a contract, something like that. That we haven't spent it yet, but we think we're gonna. The second column is what we have expended, and then the third column in the middle is our actual projection, which puts us at a total of $6,774,000. And then the last pages are ARPA, but we've talked a lot about ARPA.
Any questions on the finance report? Are there any specific pages we want Jen to read every single number on the page? Okay, Jen, thank you.
Thank you for being here on November.
Yes.
I sound worse than I feel.
Okay, approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes here. This is from our regular meeting on September 17th. Melinda's first meeting.
Yes.
I had no comments. Anyone else? Okay, I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting on September 17th, 2024. Dan moves, Rob seconds. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Special assignments. Rob, anything on your side?
How we doing on the audit, Jen? I'm sorry to make you talk some more. On that note, perfect timing.
Thanks. I think it's going into review soon. I had a last couple of questions. Oh, that's actually a very good reminder. Nicoletta McTeague, who is our assigned partner, is leaving CLA. She gave me a call a couple weeks ago. So for the time being, we will be Vanessa Rosito, who we had a few times ago.
Yeah.
She'll be our partner for the end, and then we'll have a new partner assigned to us for the next audit. But it should be going into review soon. They had just some final questions, so I expect that we'll have a draft in November. I think we're going along a little faster than we have in the past.
Cool. HHS. Jen did a new financial report for me, and for us, I should say, for the team. Waiting for the other team members to sign off on it before it's presented to anybody. We have our monthly meeting tomorrow, so that all being said, I'll give this group an update. I'm out in November too. I think you said you were out in November. I'm gonna get Jill and Chris to actually give this board an update in the December meeting. Because we'll be further along. Like at this point, it's so early, it's not really anything going on, so we'll have her present to the board. Small, quick, if you have any questions on it, we'll do it in December.
Thank you.
And I think that's.
Okay, only thing for me to report on regarding the Great Island Advisory Committee, our committee voted a few weeks ago, the Board of Selectmen last week, to actually open up the entire island. If you recall, for the first 7 or 8 months, it was really just limited to kind of walking on the paths. As staff Ed and Tony and their teams kind of cleaned up everything from woodchuck holes to all the equipment that was around there and sort of like repaired a lot of things and so forth, and some roads were sort of filled in and so forth. And so we voted 2 weeks ago, and again, Board of Selectmen approved it, to basically open up the entire island, absent the actual structures, people going in. And so there's a couple last little things on the punch list that Tony and his team are running through. But I'd expect, in the next like 4 or 5 or 6 days, you guys will probably receive there'll be a big announcement townwide that the entire island is open. Again, just at the pedestrian traffic. There was a vote to add, to also allow pets on. That was tabled at the last meeting pending some feedback for our meeting we're gonna have on Thursday, but I expect that'll be voted on and pushed forward to the Board of Selectmen very soon. With respect to we're working with Reed Hillebrand to kind of develop the overall, the vision of what the island should look like, and then begin to put some type of master long-term plan in effect. The town had, we had one sort of event out on Great Island. I think there were probably 200 or 300 people that showed up to take surveys, read about stuff. I gave a lot of us gave a bunch of tours and so forth. And there's a survey that is open, I think, through midnight tonight. So if you guys haven't filled it out, please fill it out just once. Have your friends fill it out as well. But there's 3 or 4 pages on there. We're collecting feedback, and we're going to start to review some of that on Thursday. But no material expenditures have really kind of taken place, other than about $25,000 worth of expenses related to fixing some things, to garbage cans, pet waste dispensers, and so forth, to allow people onto to the entire island. So that's it. My point.
Oxbridge Building Committee, we had our final meeting a few weeks back, so this will be the final report from me on that committee. So if you'll indulge me in a second, I'm just going to recap it. The fall of 2018 is when the Board of Education requested a new school. Construction began in December of 20. There was a 2-phase process, with the academic wing opening with the 2022 school year and the assembly wing opening for the 2023 school year. There were a number of objectives for this building. 1, consolidate early learning program into one facility. 2, eliminate portables. 3, build sufficient classroom space, anticipating future enrollment growth. 4, move student lockers outside the classrooms to gain space. 5, develop a sufficiently long and safe bus loop. 6, employ energy savings and energy generating building techniques to exceed high-performance building standards. Build a full-size gymnasium so that other town organizations can use the space. Build a cafeteria large enough to accommodate 2 classes per sitting, which basically reduce the number of sittings from 6 to 3. 9, build a sustainable kitchen. And then 10, bring in the project on time and under budget. All 10 of those objectives were met. The budget, the initial budget was the guesstimate, which we're familiar with on HHR. The original guesstimate was $63 million, which was in June of 2019. Another estimate was in August of 2020, which was $64 million. There was $63 million allocated for the project. The final cost was $57.2 million. Net of $3.8 million in proceeds already received from the state, the net cost to the town is $53.3 million. And we expect another $400,000 in proceeds from the state, which would bring our cost to $52.9 million, basically $10 million under what was allocated for the project from the town. So when you say nice job, thank you, but thanks go to, and indulge me on this, the building committee: Diane Boston, Sean Brown, Duke Deneen, Randy Giraldo, Katie Lublin, Marcy Minnick, Nick Rongo, and Rusty Schreiner. I was on the committee as a representative of the Board of Finance. I replaced John Zagrodsky, who was the original member of that committee from the Board of Finance. Ex officio members include Dr. Adley, Kate Bush, our beloved Jen Charneski, Ed Gentile, Jeremy Ginsburg, Monica McNally, Kevin Munret, Rich Rudel, John Zagrodsky, and Luke Forshaw. Our professionals were ONG, AP, and SLAM, and we had amazing support from Linda O'Leary, Karen Dunn, George Ariola, and Jeff Adams right here in Town Hall.
Kip drove
And-
the whole thing, didn't he?
Well, that's, yes. So this happened under the incredible leadership of the chair of this committee, which was Kip Coons. So for every hour the committee spent on it, he probably spent 25 to 50 hours on it. So applause to Kip, and that's a wrap. So it was a great collective effort.
I think it's a testament to how, if you go back 12 years ago or 13 years ago in terms of the decisions made around the police station, I do think our town's gotten a lot better about how we go about tackling bigger projects like this, how we go about staffing the actual building committees and so forth. We'll see how Rob's doing on this one, but I do think we've really sort of upgraded our approach over the last, at least last 15 years I've been involved of how we attack some of this stuff.
If you're interested, you have a user of the new building right here in your audience.
Yes.
Quinn, what do you think of the new building?
Sleepy.
All
There
right.
we go.
Okay. Well, Dan, thanks. Paul, pension?
Pension fund, we met this afternoon and we received a report. There are two benchmarks we use for the fund, and in September, both those benchmarks were underperformed. Fiscal year to date 2024, it was in between both benchmarks. For 1 year, it underperformed both benchmarks. For 3 years, it outperformed or was equal to those benchmarks. And since inception of going with Boston Partners, which was in 2005, they've outperformed both benchmarks by at least on an average of about a point to a point and a half. And I know you want to see this, Dan.
Can you send that around
Yeah,
electronically?
I'll send it I'll send the detailed report electronically.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. I think that's it. Nothing to say in terms of the chairman's report. Or actually, I think 2 people won't be here for the November meeting.
Me?
If anyone else,
What date is that? So I'll make sure.
I want to say the
I
19th?
believe it's the,
yes, on Tuesday the 19th.
yeah.
So why don't you all just check your schedules? If it's going to be a problem for a lot of us, maybe we can think about trying to move it. But I will, before I change anything, I'll make sure I check with all of you.
Looks good right now.
Okay.
Let me double check the charter on that. That might be
Statutory.
one of the few we must meet on the third Tuesday of November. What you do if you don't have a
Yeah.
quorum, I don't know,
Oh,
but.
is that because we have,
Yeah,
we would have new
officers.
members and have a, yeah, do we elect a chair?
Yep. But let me double check the
Okay.
charter and I'll let you know if
Okay.
it can be moved.
Okay. Anybody new business?
Even the non-election years?
Agenda review?
Yeah, it doesn't say.
As always, if you guys have comments or things you want to add to the agenda, just send me an email. Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Rob moves, Dan seconds. All those in favor? Stand adjourned.